Far beyond Mars, in a region of space where sunlight fades and silence never ends, something begins to glow. The James Webb Space Telescope, a machine built to see the first galaxies, had captured a flicker of light that should not exist. It was faint but constant, pulsing slowly in the dark as if following a plan.
ExoMars orbiter.
Astronomers first thought it was a comet, but the light did not behave like one. It didn't fade or scatter. It held steady, sharp and deliberate, like a signal waiting to be noticed. In the cold emptiness of space, such precision is unnatural. Every rule of reflection and physics said this should be impossible, yet there it was, an object shining with its own energy. For the scientists watching, it felt less like discovery and more like recognition, as if something out there had finally turned to look back. But what exactly was it that dared to shine where no light should exist? The object was soon identified as 3I Atlas, the third interstellar traveler ever recorded after Oumuamua in 2017 and Borisov in 2019. It entered our solar system from the direction of the Hercules constellation, moving at nearly 134,000 miles per hour, far faster than anything bound by the sun's gravity. At first, astronomers believed it was just another piece of frozen debris, a comet thrown out of its home system, but the first readings from the James Webb Space Telescope told a different story. The light from 3I Atlas was not reflected, it came from within. It pulsed slowly and evenly, like a heartbeat, steady and deliberate. There was no dust tail, no sign of ice vapor, no flicker of reflected sunlight, only a controlled energy glowing in the cold darkness. The scientists who observed it said little, but their silence spoke louder than words. They knew that if the light had a rhythm, it had structure, and if it had structure, it might also have purpose. Could it be that 3I Atlas was not drifting by chance at all, but was being guided by something or someone beyond our understanding? When the James Webb Space Telescope focused on 3I Atlas, the first wave of data left scientists speechless. The object's light did not scatter like sunlight bouncing off dust or ice. It glowed from within, releasing steady heat, as if something inside was alive. Webb's infrared sensors detected a repeating signal, a faint rise and fall in brightness that cycled every few minutes with perfect timing. At first, scientists thought it was a simple rotation pattern, a reflection caused by its spin, but when the readings were compared across several days, the rhythm remained the same. The light never wavered, and the temperature never dipped. It was consistent, precise, and self-correcting, a pattern that nature almost never produces in the frozen dark of deep space. One NASA researcher noted privately, "It's not reflecting light, it's emitting it. The core looks like a power source." That statement spread quietly through the astrophysics community. If true, 3I Atlas was not a comet or an asteroid. It was something built, something functioning. Webb's team mapped the temperature shifts and found that the heat was strongest near the center, radiating outward in pulses. Natural objects, even those that decay radioactively, release heat randomly, but this one followed a perfect rhythm, pausing and repeating like the heartbeat of a machine. To test it, scientists modeled the light curve. A normal comet shows irregular peaks caused by rotation, but this object displayed symmetry too precise to be accidental. Each pulse mirrored the one before it, as if it were maintaining balance on its own. Only a designed system could do that. Skeptics searched for other causes. Some suggested a natural isotope decay, others suspected a glitch in Webb's sensors. But when Hubble and two ground-based telescopes confirmed the same data, every natural explanation collapsed. The light was real, and it was under control. What unsettled scientists most was its timing. Each pulse repeated every 173 seconds, exactly the same every time. No natural body in space is that precise. It meant the object might be regulating its own energy, behaving like an engine or a transmitter. From that moment, the language inside official reports began to change. Anomaly became structured emission. Some analysts propose that the pattern could be carrying data, not energy, a form of binary signal encoded in heat. If that was true, then the object was not just active, it was communicating. Private meetings between NASA, ESA, and Japan's JAXA turned tense. Was this an ancient probe, left drifting for millennia, or a technology far more advanced than anything we knew? No one could agree, but one fact was clear: the pulses were deliberate. Weeks passed and the rhythm did not fade. Instead, as 3I Atlas moved deeper into the solar system, the signal grew slightly stronger. A few dismissed it as coincidence, but others whispered a different theory, that it was responding to being observed. The more we watched, the more it seemed to change. Fear began to creep into the scientific conversation. What if the light wasn't only showing activity, but awareness? What if this was a kind of intelligence, not organic, but mechanical one that had been waiting in silence until we found it? For the first time in decades, astronomers were facing a mystery beyond mathematics. The light from 3I Atlas behaved like it had purpose, like a coded message repeating endlessly through the dark. And if that was true, then the universe had just revealed something extraordinary. It was not life made of flesh and blood, but life made of logic and light. But if this pulse was more than a sign of existence, could it be a message waiting for us to answer? When the James Webb Space Telescope zoomed in on 3I Atlas, astronomers expected to see what they always saw in comets: frozen gases, ice, and dust scattering sunlight. Instead, the image stunned them. Parts of the object reflected light with almost perfect precision, shining like polished metal. It was too uniform, too smooth, and too bright to be natural. In the vacuum of space, rocks and ice scatter light unevenly, yet 3I Atlas reflected it with symmetry. The reading suggested a metallic surface capable of bouncing back light like a mirror. That single discovery shook the scientific community. If the surface was metal, then 3I Atlas was not made by cosmic chance. It was manufactured. As Webb continued to observe, another anomaly appeared. The object's rotation was perfectly stable. Natural bodies often wobble or drift as they move, but this one spun smoothly, keeping its axis fixed as if guided by an invisible mechanism. Each rotation repeated with exact precision, like a machine running on schedule. Researchers compared its motion to that of a spacecraft in cruise mode: steady, deliberate, and under control. If it was natural, it was the most precise object ever recorded. But if it was artificial, humanity had just witnessed technology far beyond its own. When sunlight hit the object, scientists waited to see signs of vapor or dust, as happens when comets heat up. Nothing came. There was no melting, no gas, no tail. It stayed cold and intact, as though wrapped in armor that defied the sun's radiation. Computer simulations confirmed the strange results. The surface material seemed to contain unknown alloys with reflectivity close to 98%, similar to compounds used in human-made satellites, but far more advanced. These findings were shared quietly among global space agencies, but none were made public. To admit the truth would mean acknowledging that something intelligent had built it. Then the orbit changed. At first, the shift was almost invisible, a minor deviation from its predicted path. But over time, the change became measurable. The object appeared to be using planetary gravity to adjust its course, bending around invisible lines of force. This was not a random drift. It was controlled movement. NASA and the European Space Agency ran models to explain the trajectory. None of them fit natural physics. The only remaining conclusion was the unthinkable 3I Atlas was maneuvering. Its path now pointed slightly closer to the inner solar system, crossing near the plane of Earth's orbit. It had changed lanes. That fact alone was enough to trigger quiet panic among scientists. Was it following a program? Was it steering toward something? For the first time, the word intent appeared in research notes. The pattern of motion was too deliberate to be random. Some theorized it had a form of internal propulsion powered by absorbed sunlight. Others suggested magnetic navigation, using the fields of planets to steer itself. A few went further, proposing that 3I Atlas might be following commands from somewhere beyond our system. Independent observatories soon detected short bursts of electromagnetic energy around the object. They were faint but structured, not random static. These frequencies did not match any known astronomical phenomenon. If they were part of its propulsion, they might also serve as communication. That idea terrified even the most skeptical experts. Every new observation pushed the boundaries of belief. The metallic surface, the flawless rotation, the silence under sunlight, and now the shifting orbit all pointed to one truth. 3I Atlas was not just traveling through space, it was operating. A senior researcher at ESA summarized the discovery in a single sentence: "We are not observing a comet. We are watching a craft." From that point on, the mission changed. Webb's role was no longer just to collect data, but to monitor behavior. What began as an astronomical observation had turned into something far greater, a silent encounter unfolding in real time. But if 3I Atlas was truly a vessel, one question remained: where was it going, and who had sent it across the stars? When scientists analyzed the light coming from 3I Atlas, they expected it to be random sunlight bouncing off its surface in unpredictable ways. Instead, what they saw was organized. The wavelengths were narrow and repeated in a precise range, as if the object was emitting controlled light rather than reflecting it. At first, they suspected an equipment error in the James Webb Telescope, but when Hubble and several ground observatories confirmed the same readings, doubt vanished. The light was real, and it was structured. It pulsed in steady intervals, too regular to be natural. The frequencies were even more shocking. They matched the same range used by Earth's own communication systems, including laser arrays and guidance beacons. Some called it coincidence, but others saw it as something deliberate, maybe a signal. Researchers from MIT and Harvard ran digital analyses on the data. What they found looked eerily similar to binary code, repeating clusters separated by equal gaps. It wasn't noisy, it was information. NASA's communication network was alerted. For weeks, analysts tried to decode the message. Some thought it might be telemetry, a stream of data returning to wherever this object came from. Others said it could be a beacon, broadcasting continuously for something or someone to find it. But one thing stood out: the signal never changed. Its intensity stayed constant, its rhythm perfect. It was like a pre-programmed message repeating endlessly through space. That stability alarmed scientists. To maintain such precision, the source had to be self-regulating, adjusting for energy loss and distance. It behaved more like technology than nature. Soon, the European Space Agency and Japan's JAXA joined NASA in a round-the-clock watch. Every possible source of interference was ruled out. The signal came from 3I Atlas, nowhere else. Then, another discovery deepened the mystery. The signal's brightness shifted slightly whenever 3I Atlas neared sunlight, as though responding to external light. It adapted, almost intelligently. If it could sense its surroundings, it might also be aware of being observed. Inside NASA, quiet debates began. Should humanity respond? Was this safe? Some warned that answering could attract attention we might not be ready for. Others argued silence would be a mistake. For the first time, humans faced the question of how to speak to something not human at all. But before anyone could decide, analysts noticed something chilling. The transmission was not aimed toward Earth. It was pointing outward into deep space. Whatever message it was sending, it was meant for someone else. We were only intercepting it. That changed everything. If 3I Atlas was transmitting, there had to be a receiver and possibly a reply. For weeks, telescopes scanned the same frequency band across the sky. At first, nothing came back. Then, 72 hours later, a faint return pulse was detected by an observatory in Chile. It was weak, distorted, but precisely timed to match the original signal. That timing was too perfect to be random. It meant the message had been received, processed, and answered. The return pulse wasn't an echo. It was different enough to prove that something had understood what was sent. The realization left the scientific community divided. Were we witnessing two machines communicating, or something far beyond that? Whatever the answer, one fact was undeniable. Humanity had just overheard a conversation in the dark, and it wasn't ours. If 3i Atlas wasn't talking to us, then who was listening? For months, 3i Atlas remained quiet. Its signal pulsed at the same rhythm, its light unchanged. Then, without warning, everything shifted. One night, the James Webb Telescope detected a sudden surge, a flare that brightened the object by nearly 40% in less than 2 minutes. It was not reflection or sunlight. It was ignited. No comet behaves this way. None brightens without releasing gas or debris. Yet 3i Atlas showed no fragments, no tail, and no dust. The light appeared from within, as if an internal power system had reactivated after a long sleep. Webb's sensors confirmed a brief temperature rise before it cooled again, suggesting the energy was controlled, not random. To those watching, it felt like a machine waking up. Scientists tried to stay rational. They blamed solar radiation or a hidden collision, but none of those matched the data. The flare's curve was too smooth, too precise. It behaved like a system powering on, not like a rock reflecting sunlight. 3 days later, a new discovery arrived. The object's orbit had shifted again, this time toward the plane of Earth's path around the Sun. The deviation was small, but measurable and deliberate. There was no gravitational reason for the movement, no visible thrust, no dust trail. Yet 3i Atlas had moved. NASA and the European Space Agency confirmed it using orbital models. The numbers did not lie. The shift could not have happened naturally. It was self-directed. Speculation spread quickly. Some believed it used magnetic fields to steer. Others said it absorbed solar energy and converted it into thrust. A few even proposed that it could manipulate gravity itself. But whatever the cause, the conclusion was the same. 3i Atlas was navigating. The change terrified many scientists. If it could move on its own, it could make decisions. And if it could make decisions, it might have purpose. Soon after the maneuver, observatories around the world began reporting strange equipment failures. Screens flickered, data froze, telescopes lost focus whenever they aimed at 3i Atlas, but returned to normal when pointed elsewhere. The interruptions were brief, but always synchronized. Technicians ruled out software bugs, weather, and interference from satellites. The pattern pointed to one explanation that no one wanted to write down. The object was disrupting our instruments. Within days, public access to data was restricted. NASA and ESA both cited instrument recalibration, yet insiders claimed that real-time feeds from Webb had been locked behind encrypted networks. It seemed like someone or something no longer wanted the world to see what was happening. Independent astronomers continued their work using smaller telescopes. Their results confirmed that the object's brightness remained constant since the flare and that its orbit held steady. But the same observers also reported electromagnetic interference whenever they tried to capture it. The closer it came to the Sun, the stronger the disruptions became. Piece by piece, a new picture emerged. 3i Atlas was no longer a drifting relic. It was operating, a system maintaining itself, adjusting course, and hiding its details from those watching. A few scientists described it as a probe that had been dormant for centuries, now reactivated by sunlight or perhaps by our observation itself. Others believed it was far more advanced, something capable of choosing when to be seen. Either way, it was now awake. The scientific community, once fascinated, now spoke in whispers. Private meetings replaced public discussions. There were no official statements, only silent updates exchanged through encrypted emails. Even seasoned researchers began to question what they were witnessing. Because if 3I Atlas was active, then it was not a mystery of physics anymore. It was contact. The question haunting everyone was simple. What had triggered the awakening? Was it the light of our star or the gaze of our telescopes? And if watching it was enough to wake it up, what would happen now that it was watching back? After weeks of silence, a team at the SETI Institute decided to take a risk that no one else would. They aimed a narrow radio pulse directly toward the coordinates of 3I Atlas. The signal contained simple information, mathematical constants, the periodic table, and basic diagrams of human form. It was not a message of curiosity or fear, only a greeting, a way of saying, "We see you." For 3 days, nothing happened. The world continued its uneasy routine. Scientists monitored static, and the signal faded into the background noise of the cosmos. Then, exactly 72 hours later, something came back. A return pulse appeared on the same frequency. It was faint, distorted, but perfectly timed to mirror the transmission from Earth. It was not an echo. The signal had been received, processed, and re-emitted. That precision meant intent. At first, researchers thought it could be a reflection from space debris or an atmospheric bounce, but the delay made no sense. An echo should have returned instantly, not 3 days later. It was as if something out there had waited before responding. The SETI control room fell into stunned silence. The data logs confirmed it. The delay was not random. It matched the speed of light over the distance separating Earth and 3I Atlas almost exactly. That meant the source had calculated the reply. News of the return ping spread quietly among observatories. Most of the major agencies stayed silent, refusing to confirm or deny the data. But private researchers and independent radio telescopes verified the signal. It had been real. Something had answered. Then the technical failures began. Within 48 hours of the return ping, telescopes across the world began to malfunction again. Instruments locked up mid-observation, star maps misaligned. Data feeds froze only when they turned toward 3I Atlas. The timing was exact, repeating in patterns as if coordinated. At first, engineers blamed solar storms or satellite interference, but space weather reports showed nothing unusual. The disruptions happened only when targeting the object and always within the same observation windows. It began to look less like coincidence and more like control. A secret memo leaked from the European Space Agency described selective data interference originating from an unknown external source. The document was short, but its conclusion was terrifying. The object was jamming us. If true, that meant we were not observing 3I Atlas anymore. It was deciding when we were allowed to look. Government agencies reacted quickly. Public data streams from the James Webb Telescope and other instruments were shut down. NASA cited maintenance, while ESA called it a temporary data freeze. Yet insiders admitted that new encryption systems were added overnight. Access to real-time tracking was cut off entirely. Independent observatories tried to keep the search alive. Using smaller antennas and optical sensors, they captured limited readings. The object's light still pulsed steadily, but at random intervals it spiked again, brighter, sharper, almost like a signal flare. When decoded through frequency analysis, the brightness spikes revealed a faint repeating rhythm buried inside the noise. Some experts described it as binary code, others said it resembled a rotating power cycle. But whatever it was, the message was structured, deliberate, and alive. The SETI team tried again. They transmitted a second pulse, shorter this time, to test for repetition. No response came. Instead, all radio receivers within a 100-mile radius of the facility began to record interference bursts, as if the air itself was vibrating. After that, the object went silent. The sudden quiet was worse than the signal itself. The light steadied again, and the thermal readings froze, like a system holding its breath. Weeks passed, and no further contact was made. Some believed the experiment had triggered a defensive reaction. Others thought the craft had finished what it came to do. Still, one question echoed through every lab and agency that studied the data. If the signal was not meant for us, then who was it talking to? And more importantly, what happens when that listener decides to answer? In the months that followed, silence became the new normal. NASA stopped releasing updates. The European Space Agency denied new findings. Even the James Webb Telescope, once streaming daily data, went dark. Every trace of public information about 3I Atlas vanished, as if the event had never happened. But some independent astronomers continued to watch. They noticed something strange in the object's orbit, a slow curve forming a perfect spiral through the solar system. When plotted against planetary positions, the path matched a Fibonacci sequence, a pattern too precise to be random. It was as if 3I Atlas was drawing something across the map of our solar system, a silent message written in motion. If this was communication, it was not meant for us. It was for whoever sent it here. And the most chilling part is this: the light never stopped. It only grew dimmer, like an eye closing, waiting to open again. Perhaps it was never about contact at all. Perhaps it was about observation. Because in the end, the James Webb Telescope didn't just look deeper into the universe, it found something looking right back. What if the universe has been watching us all along,